Hi, everybody. Welcome to our 2020 last event of the year, our site tour of Melia Homes, Bria Community and Garden Grove. Thanks for sitting tight for just a moment while we got ready to do this wonderful presentation today. Whoops. I just want to say thank you to everyone who has participated all year in our virtual events for NextGen. We know that this year took many unexpected turns, and I feel really honored to have been chair and lead this group during such unprecedented times and have so many great virtual events. For those of you who may or may not have participated, this is our third virtual site tour of the year, and they've all been a little bit different. The first one we did was back in May, and we toured Cressley Land Homes community up in LA. The second one we did was tour Rancho Mission Viejo and their newest village, launching in 2022, and are really, really pleased to have three wonderful Melia people here today to talk about their latest community called Bria. To get started, I wanted to play you a little video to introduce you to this infill site in Garden Grove. And then I will introduce our panelists and we'll get started. So I'm going to share my screen and play this video, and hopefully it's not too shaky. So give me one moment. Wow, that was beautiful. I am so excited to learn all about this awesome community and see how you acquired it and built it and are selling it. So without further ado, I'd like to take a moment to introduce our speakers, and you guys can unveil yourselves. So first we have Chad Lonsky, who is the Land Acquisition Analyst over at Melia. Hi, Chad. And Chad's actually a fellow NextGen member, so happy to have you present today. Next, we have Chad Brown, who's the VP of Planning and Development. So Chad Brown, welcome. Got the Chads here. And finally, we have Amber Richard, who's the VP of Sales and Marketing. So thank you so much to the three of you for being here to tell us all about this site. And we're gonna go ahead and get started with the process of how you acquired the land. So I think it's appropriate to start with Chad Lonsky. Chad, you there?
Yes, yeah.
Perfect.
Glad to be here.
So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen and bring up your presentation. And then if you want me to go to the next slide, just go ahead and say next, okay?
Great, thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Give me just one moment to get that up for you. Let's get rid of this video. Let's bring up your PowerPoint here. Let me present it. All right, here we go. Take it away.
Yeah, so glad to be here. This was kind of a site that was acquired. I was not directly involved with this process, but very familiar with it by this point, and then also familiar with kind of our other North Orange County assets. But this site was acquired primarily by our CEO, BJ Delzer, and our VP of Land Acquisition, Amy Harrell. They acquired it through an industry connection that really had no need for this location, this site, kind of for what they were looking at it for. So we kind of acquired it as obviously a for sale townhome opportunity. The location, 9861 11th Street, Garden Grove. So this is just kind of south of the 22 freeway in North Orange County, and kind of the Little Saigon community. Its prior use was assisted living facility, kind of a medical halfway facility, and then kind of its main plus is that it's right in the middle of the North Orange County infill market, and I'm going to kind of go over what that means on a market segment basis, and kind of like it says right there, it's a prime opportunity to fulfill demand for a highly desirable location, but it's also a highly underserved market in terms of new housing stock. There's obviously plenty of older housing opportunities in North Orange County, but for folks that really want to put roots down and who really enjoy their current amenities, their current kind of social structures, this is a prime opportunity to provide them brand new housing in a region that really has no source for that. So we can go to the next slide.
Yep, give me, okay.
Okay, so I just want to take a step back and kind of explain the land acquisition process on general terms, kind of the financial underwriting. And this kind of would be applicable to if you're doing greenfield or if you're doing infill. It really doesn't, it's all very, the same principles are at play here. So you kind of start with your revenue assumptions. So that would include you're looking at your market analysis. You look at kind of what the current sale prices are in that region. You take that at tally at your first step. You add your options and your lot premiums to that base pricing, and then from that revenue assumption, you would then start taking out what your land development costs would be. So that would be your entitlement consultants. So your consultants that are working with you through the city process to get the entitlement approvals from the city planning, city building department, even fire review. Then you have your horizontal construction costs you take out of that. So that would be all of your street improvements, your gutter, your horizontal utility installation, all those elements. And then also your government impact fees will be taking out. The next step, you would then just take out your direct construction costs. So that's the construction cost of actually building the homes, building the improvements. That's what you'd call your vertical construction. And then you'd also take out your sales and marketing budget from that as well. And then when you take those two major elements out, you end up with your land residuals. So basically anything that's left over once you take that out from your revenue is what the land is currently worth in that market. And that's how we get to our sale price and our purchase price rather of the land in a specific market. So, okay, so I wanted to put Bria in a perspective of kind of the greater trends that are going on in North Orange County. The picture on your screen is a picture of Levittown in Long Island, New York. It's considered by many in kind of the urban planning, urbanism community to be the first master plan, first kind of production development in the United States post-war. You can go to the next slide. Obviously, we don't see much of that kind of construction anymore in North Orange County. That's kind of come and gone. The large lot, 7,000 square foot, 10,000 square foot style construction is just no longer viable. We're running out of land and we're running out of places to put people, and that kind of construction type just does not work anymore. But on the flip side of that, it brings in kind of the urban living argument and the place for infill in the greater mosaic of Southern California home building. So I can kind of go through the pluses and kind of the drawbacks of urban living. So obviously consumers, like I said previously, they often value those older urban neighborhoods for their social connections, for the current amenities that are already in place. You know, like I said, it's right in the middle of Little Saigon, so we have a lot of buyer profiles that do value kind of those social networks and the amenities that are offered in the greater Garden Grove area. There's also a sizable cohort that likes the walkability and the urban lifestyle of an infill style product that you probably won't get on the ex-urban master plan opportunities. And then obviously job market access. So shorter commute times, easier access to work. Not really so applicable in the time of COVID-19, but you know, before this and hopefully soon after COVID-19, that'll start coming back into play. And then specifically in California coastal markets, we do have a lot of geographic constraints. So kind of we're in the LA basin, and you really can only go so far until you start hitting mountains on each side. So that's one element at play that makes the land a little more expensive in Southern California, and why the Inland Empire and kind of the Valley in Los Angeles are a little cheaper compared to their coastal markets. Political constraints. So right now, and I won't go too much into the political stories behind what land acquisition looks like in the infill markets, but a lot of cities like to preserve certain land uses that bring in fiscal revenue. You know, notably retail and other kind of other land uses that aren't as attractive to city councils and to planning staff or city staff as residential. So even though there would be opportunity in a fully natural free market, there are issues with getting a supply of land that's residentially usable. And then the last plus, as opposed to a negative, is that in infill situations, urban infrastructure is largely already in place, and it is cheaper when you compare it to master plan developments, is that there's no, you know, metal roofs or major infrastructure projects. We do run into our own infrastructure challenges, and I'm sure Chad Brown can cover that more in the next section in infill, but by and large, the actual numbers do tend to lend us a more favorable picture. We can go to the next slide. Okay, so yeah, one of the last trade-offs I really wanted to cover in the infill space is the fact that dense housing density is expensive housing. Townhomes are more expensive to build than detached housing in the Inland Empire, even in kind of the exurban parts of Orange County. As you can see there, that's a picture of an Inland Empire typical 7,000 square foot lot detached home. Right now, when we underwrite something like that, we're in the mid to high 70s. When we underwrite townhomes, we're in the high 90s to even 100 plus per square foot. So that is one challenge you come into contact when you're looking at infill housing. Really what makes up for that fact is that land is so expensive in the infill markets that you want to put as many units on as much, you know, on as little square footage land as possible. So kind of that trade-off makes up for the fact that the actual direct construction costs are higher in the infill markets. So we can go to the next slide. And this is kind of the last point I wanted to make. So Bria kind of fits in perfectly with those two trade-offs. You know, the push and pull of the high land values and the high construction costs kind of are outweighed by the high demand and then the higher density. So that was kind of the main objective I wanted to talk about on Bria in terms of its kind of larger part of the Northern Orange County infill market mosaic.
That's great, Chad. I do see that we had a couple questions come in. So if I can go ahead and ask a couple from the audience for you. What was it like working with the city of Garden Grove, and is the city pro-growth? I know Chad Brown has some insights about this as well, but wanted to see what your experience was.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, Chad Brown would definitely have some thoughts on that. But yeah, in general, Garden Grove is a great city to work with. I know the mayor is very pro-growth. He kind of understands the development process himself. But yeah, of other North Orange County cities, they're probably one of the better to work with. Yes.
Awesome. And how many consultants typically work with you when you are acquiring an infill site like this?
Yes, that'd probably be another Chad Brown question, but it really depends on the site. We have utility consultants, we have just entitlement consultants that deal with the city council aspect of the process, and then we have kind of construction consultants as well. So it really depends, but full board of consultants and very project specific. It also depends on how far along in the project we've bought it from the prior builder. Sometimes we buy sites that are fully entitled and don't really need that much consultant interaction, and sometimes we are starting from scratch. So
definitely. Well, I'll definitely save those questions as well for Chad Brown. Thanks, Zach Torres, for asking such great questions always. And Chad Wonsky, we really appreciate you participating and talking to us a little bit about the acquisition of the site and for participating in NextGen. And if there's no more questions for Chad, let's move on to Chad Brown. Hey, Chad Brown.
Hello.
All right.
Everybody.
Go ahead and let you move into part 2.
All right. And Gretchen, if you could remind me to come back to some of those questions on the answers regarding the city of Garden Grove and the consultant numbers and so forth. They can get voluminous, yes. So let me jump to here. And is this coming through? Got it. Okay. So I get involved obviously long before Amber does, and there is a lot of overlap with Chad Lonsky and some of the things that he brought up and was talking about, particularly with regards to costs and the fees. And myself and other members of the team often scour the cities, agencies, and so forth to determine what those fees and so forth are. But one of the things that comes about is Chad also sets up, as he talked about, the direct costs or the vertical costs of the houses. And that needs to come into play. I need to kind of know what the constraints are as we get into our design, not only for the site improvement side, but also as related to the direct construction costs that we're anticipating. So there is quite a bit of overlap that goes in between the acquisition side as well to the entitlement, to the development, to the sales. And it kind of rolls all the way through. And fortunately or unfortunately, I'm involved in all aspects of a project with the exception of sales. They try to keep me out of it for a couple of reasons you can probably see. But redevelopment of cities is one of the, obviously, the trends that are coming about. My background, I spent 8 years in the city of Laguna Niguel working for that city as it was coming up. I spent 6 years working for the county of Orange in their current planning section before I jumped out and working for private builders. I've been with Melia for about 10 years, and we have primarily focused on the infill communities in the coastal areas of Orange County, Encinitas, unfortunately, Anaheim, Gardena, most recently. We've been in the hills of Laverne, Glendale, all over the place. But Central Orange County has primarily been our core. And there's a lot of things that come into play that you run into on the infill side. And I think you've seen this slide before. This was something that I kind of presented when I was talking to the community itself during some community meetings for this project, and trying to explain to them how the context of a multifamily project, 2 and 3 stories high, fits into the context of their neighborhood. The neighborhood itself is made up of older single-family homes that exist, what do I want to say? I guess that's to the southwest. There's a large mosque that is in the community, and there's a high number of demographic residents that live in the area that want to be proximate to the mosque. The previous use of this site obviously was laid out as an assisted living facility. It was a single level Up to 1.95 occupants lived in the site, but a very old 1950, late 50s, early 60s type of design with a circular driveway, 2 driveways. The overabundance of street parking was driven by it. So you kind of feel those things out as you're going into a community as to what you need to design, as well as how you present it to the community for an acceptance level. Fortunately, the city of Garden Grove had their general plan designations in place for this property, so we did not need to amend the general plan, but we did need to amend the zoning on the site for the flexibility that was necessary for our design. So again, showing a little bit of the surrounding area, the streetscape was pretty well defined, but pretty mundane. So as we went into laying this out, we really wanted to focus on what we could do from a street scene from the frontage from 11th Street. The city, in talking with them and learning what they really wanted, they wanted front doors on the street. They wanted integration to integrate the project into the community rather than turning their backs on it and walling ourselves off, and certainly not have drive and garages facing the street. So we feel that we put together a very nice street presentation to them, varying orientation, the little side orientation of the buildings, of one of the buildings we have. The other has a pretty nice designed, articulated front elevation facing 11th Street. And we really had to find a way to do this to maximize the density on the site. So in other words, we put 31 units on this property. We parked them all per the codes, and we were able to integrate to the street. But in order to do so, like I said, we needed to change the zoning to a planned unit development zoning, which allowed more flexibility, because the city of Garden Grove does have some very rigid requirements with regard to open space, building site coverage, parking, height, and building separations. And if we were able to strip that away through a special planned unit development zoning, as we did, we were able to find other ways to put a project together that is well designed and that provided benefits that that overcame building separations and so forth from the backside. So again, the city wanted the variation of the building height, but we wanted the size and the square footages that we needed to get to. So we rolled that together with a multiple attached 2- and 3-story different plan types. Again, I talked about the orientation to the street, but we wanted to be livable and scalable to the community. So therefore, we've got a lot of 2nd-story or 2-story elements that are front to the street. Even the side orientation, this is a 2-story unit here at the front elevation facing the street rather than the higher 3-story right at the street frontage. I don't believe there's a real reason to go read through all this. This is just some of the information that we analyzed coming into it as to what the maximum density allowances are. And there's a lot of things that go into play with it, what the permitted uses are from the general plan, from the zoning. And again, I mentioned that we needed to go through the PUD process. We also wanted to make sure that we were able to demonstrate this to the community and the city. So I go out and I meet with the community members, both one-on-one as well as larger groups, and explain to them the project, try to understand their hot buttons, what they might bring up at the public hearings that we'll have with the Planning Commission and/or City Council, and anticipate, plan, and have an answer or present a presentation that helps address that. In this particular aspect, there was a lot of discussion about how can you get so many houses on this property? Well, this project and this site was allowed to have up to 42 units on the property. I'm reading from the last bullet item, or up to 24 units to the acre. So one of the points that I touched on was to make sure that they understand that we were maximizing the density for the market that we wanted to drive to, but not maximizing what the city could allow if we could park it, if we could meet some of the other requirements. So that was somewhat both educational for the city and for the community are some of the things that I try to do as a part of the entitlement and the design of the project. From a straight layout as to where this project sits, how it lays out, how it fits in. We designed with driveway reductions. As I mentioned, there were originally two driveways out of the site. We consolidated it down into one. Everything was fed off that central spine with all internal parking for circulation. We created some open space areas to fill in and create some recreation amenities on site for the residents, as well as each of the paseos that lead between the buildings, as well as some of the private patios that we integrated, provide for private open space for use of them, but also some integration into the community through the paseo areas of passive benches or places for people to get out of their own space and maybe just go sit and maybe meet a neighbor or so, which is always nice these days. The patio yard spaces that we created were somewhat out of necessity for the zoning development standards in the city. But we were able to create them in a manner that were really attractive from the sales standpoint. And I think our buyers have really enjoyed having some private walled off space that they can decorate and enjoy without having to jump into the rest of the community. I'll repeat, similar to the previous slide, this is laying out the perspective or the hard elevations from the entitlements phases that we shared with the city and how we presented it to them. Architecture is obviously a very big driver, both for the political acceptance as well as for the community acceptance. So it's important that you put your best foot forward with an architectural rendering before you step foot and go and talk to your neighbors or go and talk to your elected officials or planning department. And you got to be careful in your prelims and your architectural design. Again, keeping in mind what Chad Lonsky has talked about with regards to the direct cost for construction, is you've got to balance that as to what is feasible from the articulation and roof lines. All that costs dollars. Balconies, the railings, the decorative aspects around windows, whether it's ledgers, planters, iron, whatever it might be, or tile insets. All those play into it, and sometimes there was a bit of a budgetary fight that goes on of what you might need and what I might have needed to carry entitlement versus our budget constraints. Again, here's that repeat of the other one. I just wanted to touch on this slide again about again how the massing of the architecture presents itself to the street, because quite frankly, the street frontage is what the community is most caring about, that and parking, and what type of new residents might be introduced into their established community. To further show that, obviously, we come up with some perspectives that give it some scale by putting some pedestrians in, showing some of the perspective of what the streetscape landscaping might look like, and how portions of this project might live or look as you drive by from the community or approaching your own future community. I'm also involved in designing or help facilitating design, the floor plans, meeting what our demographics are expected to want, also trying to maximize and create flex space. So for instance, here we have our plan A and plan B, which turned into 1 and 2, but we also developed a plan 3, which is kind of nifty, that you may have seen in the video side, that it's on the 2-story unit. We extended and bridged over the driveway between the garages for the buildings to create basically a 3rd floor plan that created a little bit more square footage, a little bit more saleable square footage, as well as a variation on plans. And I think Amber, you will hear Amber discuss during her presentation that we only were able to produce 4 of those units given the situation, but once those 4 were released, or when each of those 4 were released, they were amongst the first to go, only because they bumped up the size of the square footage. I believe they increased the bedroom count, but they were just a unique end unit floor plan, and again, they bridged over the top. Again, going into one of the high points that we needed to discuss with the community, and sometimes it's very simple graphics that you present to the community, as well as I shared this with the Planning Commission and the City Council, was the traffic generation of the High Long facility, which was the previous congregate care facility there. And although it's incrementally different, many of the concerns that you hear talking with the community and talking with the neighbors and the city is what's the traffic changes, what's the pattern changes, what are the daily trips. So part of our traffic generation and the studies and consultants that we created was to study that. And although it's an incremental 13 trip difference overall, 23 trip difference reduction, that's something that's important to point out to the community and the decision makers on this, is that hopefully we're alleviating some of the concerns that the community might have, and that gives them a little bit of a soft space that they can go to in order to support the project. And again, this is again touching on the traffic and trip generation that was laid out and presented to the others. There's to point out the benefits of a project as it goes forward rather than the impacts that it brings. Every project has a short-term impacts with construction noise, construction trips, but the end result that we all end up with is something that you need to be able to present something that is feasible in its design. It meets the construction costs. And you have to know what those costs are before you lead into it, and know your audience, know your city, and educate your city on what your goals, what your timelines are, what your expectations are. So hopefully they get back with you and are open and communicative through their concerns that they have to contend with in their own daily processing of your projects.
I love that. Awesome. We have quite a few questions, Chad. So I think I'm just going to jump right into them. A couple people did ask some questions about marketing, so I'm going to save them, everybody, for Amber. But to start off, in general, what was one of the toughest aspects for you and Melia in challenges in getting city approval for this project?
It was primarily listening to the city in their the constraints that they have and the important points that they have to contend with by their city council. The questions that come up from the community often are related to parking and vehicle traffic. I think that's why this particular presentation kind of focused on that. So again, going back to what the city views as the important points, hearing from what those are and researching and finding the information and be able to present and discuss that with the city, because it did carry over into the city council and the planning commission hearings as well.
Were the neighbors friendly, or how were, how did they do? Were they welcoming to new construction, since it usually increases their value of their current homes, or did you see a lot of opposition locally, like on the street?
This community has a lot of longtime residents in it. Mm-hmm. So it was initially not so warm of welcome, but by the time at the end of the community meeting, after they understood the project, they understood the change that was coming from what was there and the complaints of the street parking and so forth that it had presented over the years, they warmed to it. It went from that's too many houses on the property, that's too dense, how can you be there, to how much are they going to be and when can I buy one? So it was kind of interesting to hear that change and so forth. And a lot of that is just through the education and time and giving the neighbors information that they seek and information about the project that they may not be able to obtain from the city. So you really got to put yourself in front of them and engage with them. I not necessarily on this project, but many projects I've spent evenings sitting in dining room table, living rooms with neighbors, discussing the project. And oftentimes it's, we agree to disagree, but this is how it, from the impact is what it's going to be, and we'll do our best. And this is how we can try to minimize it. Is that acceptable to you? So you really have to open up for the dialogue and so forth with the community.
Isn't that so interesting how that happens? Once you actually sit down and talk to them, they sometimes change their tune.
And it helps. Oftentimes I end up with them writing letters of support or appearing at the hearings, and the council people love to have that.
Yes. One comment you made is that you didn't max out on density. So when Brian Leon asked why not, and did it make the product a little bit less desirable or marketable if you did max out?
There's a couple of factors that come into that regarding maxing it out. One, the cities, and almost every city, Fullerton, for instance, was another recent project that had the same problem. They have a view of density that they might be able to allow, but when you shake the bag of all the development standards that they have with their open space, building site coverage, parking requirements, everything else that comes into play with the development of a project, unless we were willing to bathtub, in other words, groundwater is very shallow here. So unless we were able to do subterranean parking in a bathtub type setting, which would be infeasible from an expense standpoint, there was no way that we would be able to maximize density on this site. I think we did maximize what we could do for the marketplace that we wanted to be in, of that 1,500 to 2,000 square foot homes, and not 700, 800 square foot apartments. Mm-hmm. So that also comes into play as the type of builder that we are. We're a for sale builder. We're not necessarily a multifamily apartment builder.
Got it. Who worked on the architectural design of the community?
This was preliminary architectural design was done by Withy Malcolm.
Okay. And was there a particular reason? Did the city want the exterior elevation, or is that just what the architecture came up with?
Withy Malcolm, Dirk Phelan in particular, had worked on a number of projects in the city. He was engaged with this site with the previous buyer who we bought out their position for. And so because he had some familiarity with it, and I had worked with Dirk in the past, it was seamless to keep it with him. We dramatically changed the product from what the earlier buyer had been talking with the city about. We changed it, 100%. Went to a different design, but Dirk was familiar with that, and Dirk did a great job from the entitlement side.
Nice. We did get kind of another question about the combination of 2-story and 3-story, the segmentation of that. Were you trying? Let me kind of read this because it's a long question, but can you speak to the amount of 2-story articulation you have? Was there a market segment you were trying to hit with the 2-story floor plans versus having an entirely 3-story building and 2-story end units? Because it's very intricate architecture. So I think just speaking a tiny bit about that.
Well, from having a 2-story at the end unit and having it mixed along the street frontage, obviously, was a design, I want to call it a constraint, was a design consideration that we wanted to put in. As far as marketability and things of that, from that standpoint, I think you may be thinking about it a little too much. You really want to look and see what designs well, what lives together. And from an effective build cost standpoint, if you can put your two-story units side by side and expand that, obviously it's saving you some costs because you're not having to do quite the roof articulation and quite the differences that are come with that. Essentially, you really want to balance it with what looks good from the community side, what sells good, and what meets your budgetary constraints.
Okay. How long was the entitlement process for this site?
Gosh, the entitlement side of this, from the initial submittal through the CEQA documentation, which ended up being a mitigated negative declaration, we couldn't do the categorical exemption for infill because of the PUD zoning that we took forward with or moved forward with in changing the zoning. But it was about 8 months total, which is relatively quick, but that takes a lot of pushing on the city staff to keep them responsive and to keep them moving forward.
Did it have a development agreement?
No.
No? Okay. And then Bill Watt would like to know, what were the parking ratios for residents and guests?
Parking ratios in the city of Garden Grove, I don't know them off the top of my head right now, but it's based upon bedroom count. So it's a mix of how many bedrooms each unit has, and then I believe the guest is either a quarter or a half per unit. But they do require 2-car garages, so we provide a 2-car attached direct access garage to each home, with the guest parking sprinkled throughout the community.
Okay. Chad, we do have a couple more questions for you, but I want to pause there. I'd like to go to Amber. She can speak a little bit about the sales and marketing, and at the end, we'll answer whatever questions we have left. So we're gonna pause.
Appreciate it. I'll be here.
Yes, thank you. It's been so insightful and interesting, and I hope it is for everybody out there watching. Amber Richard, welcome, VP of Sales and Marketing. So we're gonna go ahead and turn it over to you. Great to see you. Here you go.
Thanks. Happy to be here. Just gonna share my screen. Is that on?
Yep, you're good.
All right. So they gave you a really great overview of the project, but I'm going to talk a little bit about the sales and marketing aspects of the community. So this is just a quick picture of the exterior done. This is our model building. And then this is just a quick picture of the site. So you can see that first building in the front, that's complete. That's 12 units connected. And then that's our phase 1 in models. Our sales trailer is just to the right. And then we've got our phase 2 to the right, and then our phase 3 in the back. So you can see the various stages of the construction between the phases. And then this is just a overview of our site plan and what we have sold to date. So we have 31 homes here total. And actually, I needed to update this. We just released our last 2. So we've actually got all 31 released. We released our models over the weekend. We've closed phase 1, so 10 homes closed, and then we've got some in escrow. We're actually closing this week and next throughout phase 2, and then we've got our phase 3. We've got some sales there and a few more left. So by the end of this week, we're hoping actually to convert 2 more in our phase 3 and be down to just 3 more homes remaining for the community. So we're coming up to the end of it, which is really exciting. It's been a really good project for us. But I did want to talk about some of our community challenges that we face here. Anytime we're on infill, there is different challenges that we'll see. A lot of times edge conditions, which is the properties or communities or businesses that are around the edge of our community. Sometimes those can be a concern. For example, on this site, we did have a neighbor's yard that was a little bit run down that we went through, and we kind of cleaned up their backyard and front yard. So it just helped improve what people will see from their windows. And another thing that we deal with on infill is because a lot of times we're building in a city where there's not a lot of other homes. For example, in this one, there's not a lot of new construction in Garden Grove. There's a lot in Anaheim. There's some in Stanton, a lot of the neighboring communities. But we may run into appraisal issues if there's not new construction close enough to the project. So we did have that a little bit here with phase 1, but we got through it once we were able to close some cash deals. And then pre-sale challenges. So on this one, we opened on May 30th. For our pre-sales and our sales office. And then our models grand open on September 12th. Now we opened at a really weird time in the middle of COVID, and that could have been part of it as well. But a lot of people really wanted to see the models before they were willing to make a purchase decision. So during pre-sales, we actually only sold 1 home, but as we got closer to the model opening and people were able to walk, we began to sell, and we had 5 homes sold by the time we officially opened. And then since opening models, we've been able to sell about 2 homes per week, which is a really good sales pace for the community. And then just, pre-qualification, always at neighborhoods, we want to make sure that buyers can qualify. So we do have them go with our preferred lender just to make sure that everything ties out. And then we track our escrows really carefully. Condo project approvals and other things sometimes we can run into some issues or, outside lenders delaying getting documents, but we do have a pretty good system when we have everyone go through the same pre-qualification. And then, of course, probably our biggest challenge is selling in the time of COVID-19. We all have had to make changes for COVID, and of course, in the sales offices, that's no exception. So we launched 2 projects this spring. Bria was one of 2. So we just try really hard to be respectful to everybody. We provide masks. We don't shake hands anymore, which is always kind of weird in selling. I mean, you're used to seeing facial expressions and being able to shake someone's hand when they come in. So of course that's all gone away, but we do keep the masks, sanitizers, disinfecting wipes, everything's available at our sales office for the staff and for any guests that come in. And then we try to kind of loop that into our home. So this is a photo of our Plan 1 den. And as you can see in the picture, we demonstrate it as an office or a workspace. So it kind of appeals to the buyer who maybe has had to start working from home. And so we tried to tie that into our design as well. And then this is just a quick, just an overview of our Residence 1. This one is 1762 to 1767 square feet, and it's a 2-bedroom plus a den. It's 3 stories, 2.5 bath, and we have this in the 630 range. And here's just a few more pictures of the interior of this unit. And so the way that we designed this home was to appeal to more of an adult living situation. So we've got just the 2 bedrooms. So we designed it kind of like a dual master, where the master bedroom and the secondary both offer a larger bed and are demonstrated to appeal kind of more to the adults. And then, like I mentioned, we've got the workspace in our den downstairs. So kind of helps with the work from home. And then this is our Plan 2, which is 1688 to 1695 square feet. This is more of our traditional family home, and that's how we demonstrated it. It's got 3 bedrooms plus a loft, and it's priced from the low 700 range. Those are just some images of the model. So as you saw in the last one, we kind of used a lot of warm tones. And then this one, we kind of cooled it down with a lot of grays and creams and some blue hues in there as well. And then this is just some more pictures of our Plan 2 model. And this one, we did try to target more of that family buyer. So we did both of our secondary bedrooms, one for a boy, one for a girl, and then kind of a teen type hangout in the loft where it just kind of shows that separation for the kids. And then our Residence 3, we didn't model it like you heard previously. We only have 4 of these in the community, so we didn't do model homes for this, but you can see here in this picture the way that they attach. They're on the far left of the building, and they attach at the 2nd floor and then kind of have a breezeway on the 1st floor. This, like Chad said, is a really popular floor plan. We sold out of them immediately almost every time when we released them. So this is a just over 2,000 square feet. It's a 3-bedroom. So it kind of operates like the Plan 1 is a dual master on the top story, but then it's got a 3rd bedroom on the 2nd floor living space and then a den on the 1st floor. So it's a really functional floor plan. And that's just a picture of the exterior for you guys. As far as marketing the homes, we do a lot of digital marketing. It's our focus really is digital. I feel like so many people start their search online before they ever come out to the sales offices. They've already seen your floor plans, they've already seen your pictures because they start online. So that's really where we focus our attention. Email marketing, we do regular scheduled e-blasts to internal lists, and then the paid interest lists. Paid interest lists have worked really well for us, and it's where we'll target a buyer, maybe a rental market, certain age range, certain income level, et cetera. You can choose from a variety of different things to pick from, and then you can send the e-blast to those lists. Why rent when you can own is our most popular e-blast topic that we've gotten responses on, but we do them for featured floor plans, when we launch our prequels, or when we grand open the community, any new phase releases, why it's a good time to buy, any significant community updates we target in our email marketing. And then online marketing, we do Facebook ads, we do Google, Zillow Builder Boost, third-party emails like I just mentioned, New Home Source, BDX, ad roll, interestless emails, and blog posts. And those are actually in the order of how well those marketing campaigns have done for us. So that's Facebook ads being the most successful. And then we also do additional advertising. We don't do a ton of print marketing, but we did advertise in a local newspaper in Garden Grove for this project. Not every week, but several weekends we would do an ad. So this is just one example of an ad that we did there. And then on the weekends, we also place bootlegs around the neighborhood. And that's just a picture of what our bootleg sign looks like. And we place 250 bootlegs just to help people driving by, to kind of drive traffic to the neighborhood and help people who may not know exactly where it's at with the arrow signs to help them get there. And then I just wanted to include a few pictures of some of our buyers. We've got a great group of buyers here, a mix of primary and investors, but the majority are primary homeowners. And we've got families, and then we've got the singles, kind of like what we targeted. So you can see here just a few of our buyers, and then a few more of our buyers and one of our sales agents in this last photo. But we had a really good group here. So that is it for the sales and marketing, unless anyone has questions on that. I think I did see a couple questions come in though. I think somebody asked who designed. AI did our design, and as you can see, they look great. And then who is our ad agency, I think was another question, and we use P11 Creative for our marketing.
Awesome. I love seeing those pictures of home buyers, Amber.
Yeah.
It makes it like all come together and like the point of what we all do, which I know we all know, but I just love it from, as a marketer, it makes it so fun at the end, and
yes,
I love to
it
see
is
them
fun.
and have those. We do have a couple questions. If you want to unshare your screen,
I'm trying to figure out how to do it.
on the top, go to the red, like stop sharing. I know, it's like we've been in COVID for so long and I still have challenges with like doing. So you did answer those two. We had a couple questions about pre-sales. Did you do virtual tours or virtual Zooms or anything for your pre-sale process?
So for this community, we did not, and I think it would have helped. We did it at our other neighborhood that we opened actually without models, and it really did help people to at least get their appetite wet. I feel like people still need to walk in, a lot of times, walk in, feel the house. But I do think without the virtual tours, people really kind of struggle to understand, especially on attached product. It can be difficult when you walk into the construction. And so I think that was the bigger thing, and the anticipation of models. They knew models were coming. There's 31 houses here, so they had a lot to choose from. But I think had we done some virtual, it would have helped. And that is something we're targeting going forward, just because online is such a big part of people's experience. So I think really offering those virtual tours and as much information as we can put online in advance really helps with those kind of things. So for future communities, we are doing all virtual tours through our
Absolutely. They're a huge benefit. Also, it's funny, I got a question of, did you originally plan on doing an office space for Plan 1, or did that change after the pandemic? And that's actually where I'm sitting right now, is Plan 1 office space. So can you speak to, did your interior design, change at all moving into the pandemic?
So for this one, we actually always had it shown as an office space. And unfortunately, I don't have a picture, but there's a really big storage closet in that office space on the first floor. And so we changed that at the last minute to demonstrate all kinds of like workout stuff. So like an exercise ball, a yoga mat, and stuff like that we hadn't originally put in. But since people are working from home, we incorporated that. And then on our communities going forward, it is something we're really thinking about in each one. How can we demonstrate the different uses? Like, is it a teen area or a homeschool room or that kind of thing? So I think more and more as we go forward, you'll see that in models. People are trying to tie in all the different ways we use our home.
Yes, I totally agree. Especially those Pelotons that you can't move and everyone has now and stuff like that. Were any of your home buyers from any of the neighboring homes, like kind of immediately adjacent?
I don't know immediately adjacent, maybe or maybe not. I know we do have a lot that are in Garden Grove, staying in the city, and then some from other neighborhoods as well. I mean, especially on the investor side, I think we get a mix of people who are just looking at different types of investment and what makes sense. But a lot of our buyers are from Garden Grove. Not sure if they're, in the exact neighboring, but close. A lot of them are close.
Yeah, so you kind of targeted your marketing budget for that area and have been able to, you're on your last phase release.
Out with our, the neighboring cities too, just because if somebody's looking at new construction, they may be looking at a few different cities. So we do target different cities as well.
Yeah. I have an opinion on this, but do you think that in 2021 we'll move towards more of a 100% virtual environment? Are you still planning models given, we don't know about in-person and appointments, or what are your thoughts?
We definitely are positioning ourselves to have a really good virtual experience, but most of our neighborhoods, we will do models. I still think people, especially like this is kind of an entry level price point, even though we're in the 600s, it's Orange County. So it's a lot of first time buyers or young buyers. And I feel like, especially on that, you kind of need to have that whole emotional connection. And I feel like when people walk in, that's when it kind of seals the deal. You might like the price, you might like the floor plan on paper, you might like the virtual tour, but a lot of people do need to touch and feel and walk through it. And that's what really makes it come to life. So for at least now, we're going to continue with doing models and additionally really kind of continuing to really give that virtual side as well, just to make it, just to reach out to both. Because I think, like I said, it starts at home, but I feel like a lot of people gotta get out there still.
Right. Especially with the attached product. Sometimes understanding the orientation of your house or how you're going to enter it, with these very intricate architectural designs. People really...
If you walk in an attached unit and it's just framed, you see the next person's house and it's hard to maybe put together, like, where does this wall end and this wall begin? So definitely, I agree.
Yes. Not related to Bria, but for maybe some other communities, a question we've had is, have you gone back to the city? And I don't know if this is for you or maybe Chad, but have any of your current communities in design been sent back for redesign, considering in COVID and we're all living at home, and like we kind of talked about, exercise spaces and office spaces. Have you guys gone back to the drawing board on anything to redesign anything?
From the marketing perspective, we didn't really change our floor plans since the point they came to me, at least, but we are kind of changing up the way that we're designing that space and demonstrating that space. So just like I said, trying to make them for different aspects. Is it the homeschool room or the teen room or the work from home or the home gym? Those kind of questions.
We do have a couple more questions, and I know they're going to pertain to Chad as well. So if you all would like to hop back on, one question, I guess, for all of you is maybe starting with Amber. What are you planning for the market in 2021? Are you really optimistic and bullish as a company, or what are your thoughts there?
So like I said, we're just really trying to enhance our online experience as much as possible. So doing virtual tours in probably all of our neighborhoods going forward, it's something that we're going to start doing. And then kind of like the video that you saw, just trying to make it to where everybody can get as much information online. That's kind of our shift, is just making sure we're staying up to date with all of that.
Yeah. Chad Lonsky, what about you? How's the land acquisition front going over at Melia?
Yeah, I'd say these past few months have been probably some of our busiest, ironically. There's been a lot of transactions, a lot of land out there, a lot of people that have been sitting on their land and are seeing that now's the time to bring it onto market. Obviously we've seen incredible sales rates with this time, people kind of moving out of their apartments into something a little larger. So it's kind of a good time for land acquisition.
Definitely. You've been busy. Chad Brown, I know we kind of touched on this earlier with Chad Lonsky, and we're bringing it back to you. How many consultants overall do you think you worked with on a community like Bria?
There's probably a mix between 10 and 15 for various projects. Sometimes, obviously, many projects might have a lot more, but not only civil, architect, structural, landscape design. Then you have your dry utility consultants. You have water quality. You have, it kind of goes on and on. Traffic studies, parking studies, environmental documents, biologists, paleontologists, archaeologists. It depends on the setting, depends on the project, but typically there is, just during the entitlement side, there's probably a mix between, I'd say 7 to 10, or on average between 10 and 15 per project that you engage with.
Yeah, sounds about right. I would expect, yeah, that's fine. Another question I think is funny, so I'm kind of laughing. What was maybe during Bria or in general in your career, one of the most hilariously ridiculous comments you got from a NIMBY regarding this project?
Well, I saw that question out there, and I'm excited that you asked about it. So there was a project about 7 or 8 years ago in the city of Stanton that we were working on. And this same neighbor had came up upon two aspects. One, while I was meeting with her in her home, she was complaining to me about parking, and this was a single-family detached neighborhood in Stanton that we were building, where former dog kennels existed that were probably barking constantly. So she's complaining about our project and how we're not going to have any parking, and I'm sitting in her converted 2-car garage that's now a living room, and her cars are all parked on the street in the driveway. But this same woman, at the public hearing in front of the city council, was concerned about our 2nd-story windows looking into her rear yard, and evidently her laundry room was at the back of her house. And during the hearing, she indicated that she likes to do her laundry naked and was concerned about the privacy of the 2nd-story windows looking into it. I don't think I've ever had someone divulge such personal information, so to speak, at a public hearing in public comment before. But I'd have to go back and think of others, but that's always one that comes to the forefront in my mind.
That is so funny. Oh my gosh. Sorry, I just have to regroup for a sec because that was funny. Let me see. Were there inclusionary housing requirements for Bria?
Thankfully, Garden Grove has not adopted inclusionary housing, correct?
Yeah.
So no.
Amber, here's a question for you. Did the city want more shared community amenities? Or, you know, what was their thoughts on like limited space? Have you heard from home buyers wishing there was more, or?
I'm not sure about the city. I know Chad handles that side of it, but we do have, and we didn't picture it, maybe I should have, but we do have a common area here with a tot lot for kids. And then I maybe could have put a little more demonstration. We have a front patio area, and then on particular floor plans, there's a balcony. So you don't get a yard, but I think for this buyer, a lot of them don't really expect it or need it. And then you do have the common area for like a barbecue, and there's a picnic table over there and the tot lot. So if you've got kids, you've got a place for them to play.
Got it.
But no
have
yards.
You seen a lot of multi-gen buyers living with, you know, their parents and their children, or has it been a lot of, you know, single professionals?
More single professional. These are not huge homes, so I don't think we have as many of the multi-generational here. I think we have some assistance from the older generations on purchasing, but I don't know that I've heard of anybody, and I don't know every single buyer at the community, but I don't know that I've heard of any multi-generational. I think just because the square footage, like I said, is a little smaller here.
Got it. Not sure which Chad this question might be for, but this is from Bill Watt. I'm pretty sure you figure a builder profit and OH into your land value calculation. What is your target for those two components in the market today that works so successfully to work successfully to underwrite deals? So builder profit and OH overhead.
I mean, kind of our gross margin is, 10% on a site that needs entitlements, 12% on a site, or 10, opposite, 12% on a site that needs entitlements, 10% on a site that is fully entitled. So. And there's obviously, you can look at IRR, you can look at cash on cash. There's all sorts of different indexes you can look at, but on gross margins, that's kind of our two points.
Gotcha. And our final question, I think, is for Amber. Do you think there's going to be a need for sales counselors in the future? And I think the question means physically in sales offices.
I still think we're going to need sales counselors. I think guiding you through that process, I mean, computers are good and helpful. And like I said, they can get you started, but I do think that people need that person who they can call, who they can, have a community expert who's going to tell them the ins and outs. And you can bring in your own agent always, but I do think having that community expert there who can guide people is so important to the sales process, and also to making sure that those sales stick. Because it's one thing to get somebody excited and get them to sign a contract, but another thing to make them comfortable enough to stick through a lot of times a 6-month escrow period. So for sure we need our salespeople. I would say it's a big part of it.
Yeah, I totally agree. Having worked in sales myself, I think there will always be a need for that person, and people will always, the human connection is not gone because of COVID. We just are limited right now. But creating homes is so important, and we all appreciate what you're doing out there. And it's not easy. We all know building homes today is harder than ever. But I think that's our last question. And if there are no more, I know for our marketing team, we just wanted to like say cheese for a second. And then I have one other announcement after. So maybe I hope Land fams out there ready. But 1, 2, 3, smile. Okay, there's Tim. So perfect timing. So Chad, and Amber, thank you so much for your time today. I learned a lot, and I'm really happy that we got to tour one of your great communities. You're a fantastic home builder in Orange County here. So thank you so much for your time. And then just to our audience, yeah. It's our last event of the year. And just to our audience, I wanted to go ahead and introduce Tim Huen, who's the land acquisition manager over at Meritage Homes. And he will be the chair of the NextGen group in 2021. So Tim, we're really excited to have you at the helm of the NextGen group. I know you're gonna lead the group and do great things. So just wanted to introduce you to everybody. And with that being said, have a very happy holidays, Merry Christmas to all. And thank you so much for attending tonight. Bye.